Coogs house. Everyone is excited about the direction of the men's basketball program and the football program and the way things are heading. But are they going to be excited about the person directing the athletics?
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who can't step by, or that one random Tech fan that is just here to watch and talk about Donovan Smith. And anyway, thank you for making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the day. If you want to join the conversation but don't know what to say, tell us your favorite lawn game, cornhole, can jam, etc. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. And we got a bunch of stuff to break down today and looking at key candidates for the athletic director position. Looks like Houston, after dealing with some weather things last week, after kind of taking their time, making sure they find the right candidate, is finally down to a handful of people that really are like final type of candidates, people that are really interested in this position. Now, this is mostly going off of a handful of resumes and reading what was been reported by the Houston Chronicle, things like that, but then extrapolating that and looking at what those resumes would do at a place like Houston. I do want to talk some about smaller school folks, guys with more of the small school resume to their name. You'll notice there's one I think you're expecting that might get left out in that segment. I want to talk about one that I think everyone's got as a familiar name, but maybe not the best fit. And first and foremost, talk about the latest name thrown into this bunch, and that is Keli Zinn. So in looking at this, I think it's important to look at a couple of things here, but athletic director is an important position. Obviously, Kelvin Sampson, head men's basketball coaches, said that this needs to be a Lewis and Clark type hire because we need to go where we haven't been. We need to explore. We need new ideas, right? We've heard Sampson be critical of the marketing and aspects of the athletic program in the past. It makes sense that he's got thoughts on this as well. For what it's worth, Sampson worked in some impressive athletic programs at Washington State, at Oklahoma, at Indiana, right? He's seen how that goes. Willie Fritz has had similar kinds of things to say. He wants, he talks about ADs, always talk about two things, hiring coaches and raising money. And in this day and age, it might be the opposite direction of that. Like raising money might be first. He said that at Big 12 Media Days. And I think Zinn, Keli Zinn, LSU's executive deputy athletic director, is probably at the top of the list when you look at those kinds of things as being important, right? You think about like the new direction and frontier that Sampson is talking about. That is NIL. When we talk about looking at, raising money, who's done that better than Louisiana State University? Now, I have to say that it's worth pointing out, I want to read through her resume some and talk about some highlights. She's been involved at high-level athletics for a long time. She spent the last 2 years at LSU, again, as the executive deputy AD. For what it's worth, LSU has won 3 national titles in those 2 years, handful of other SEC titles. Revenue is up 21% in the 2 years that she has been there. The biggest thing to her name there, though, that I think is important is that she's been fostering the NILSU program. The NILSU program is the lead NIL venture at LSU. It includes different content creation things that will share life and insight on athletes and helps make connections between agents and athletes, help younger athletes build their brands as big or small as they want. So it helps guide them in the direction to become the kind of best version of themselves on the market, or if they don't want to get involved in that, it's very individualized and allows athletes to kind of dabble in that as much as they want. So, starting quarterback wants some cash, they can go get involved in that and see what options there are in the city of Houston for the starting quarterback if that were to translate over, right? If, you're more of an introverted defensive tackle, doesn't have to be your job, right? Or whatever, right? It goes all over the place with that. Now, before LSU, the last couple of years, Keli Zinn had been at West Virginia for 12 years. It's worth pointing out that she was actually the interim AD and the first female AD at West Virginia in 2015. After that, she was the executive senior athletic director, so the new AD kept her on, right? I think it's worth pointing out that's how well that they thought she had done. Before that, she was the associate AD for compliance and promoted within. She was also there when they made the jump. She was in charge of compliance when they made the jump to the Big 12 from the Big East. So she's seen kind of what it looks like to go into this conference quite literally, and she has some experience in all of that. Earlier, before all of that, she was the assistant AD at Maryland from 2005 to 2010. She is a West Virginia girl by heart, so I don't mean to say that there was like a time period where she wasn't, but I should point out she was also an assistant AD at another Power 4 institution, right? And so across the board here, you're seeing someone with experience at big brand schools. Maryland, right, was in the ACC at the time. West Virginia, we know, went from Big East to Big 12 in her time there. And then obviously LSU being the marquee program out of Louisiana in the SEC, right? And I think people are critical of her money-making ventures and the things that she's done to kind of raise money at LSU. And I think the common criticism is like, well, of course you raise money at LSU. LSU could raise money by sending out envelopes with the right seal on the front, right? It doesn't have to do a whole lot of things. I think people are almost more pessimistic about it because of that. To which I say, yes, it has a bunch of cash flow, right? West Virginia is the biggest show in town. It had a bunch of cash flow. However, there is something to be said about the person who knows how to funnel, where to look for the cash, and where to draw it out of, right? Yes, there are conversations to be had at LSU that will always, net you a lot of money. But understanding navigating those conversations is a skill set. And I think that that's being overlooked because we're like, well, of course you made money at LSU, or of course you made money at West Virginia, like that. And the job at Houston is notably harder. I don't mean to say that it's not. There's 3 major professional franchises in town, along with a couple of smaller ones like the Dash and the Dynamo. And you also got other big name fan bases and alumni that use your market to their discretion as well. You're kind of working at a different set of circumstances. However, I think that her skill set in, again, the discussions around getting that money, drawing that money, having the setup, understanding what things need to look like, and frankly, just having the resume that reads, I'm not just pulling this out of thin air. I know what it looks like at these types of programs, I think is important, right? And I also think it's important that, she's already in just 2 years at LSU seen the revenue go up and seen the NIL money go in, etc. It's not like the money wasn't at LSU before she got there. The 21% increase in revenue over 2 years is impressive and noteworthy because there was money. I don't mean to spoil, the pooch here. There was money at LSU before 2 years ago, right? Like that. That's not just something that just like, oh, they just have 10% growth every year and it's going to be 21% every 2. They don't. That's not a normal thing. That doesn't just normally happen. That is a statistical representation of impressive work done by Keli Zinn there. She's the latest name thrown in this. I think it's worth pointing out that Just Duarte, the Houston Chronicle, tweeted out her name specifically on Sunday as someone who's getting pulled in as a name of note. I don't know if you want to read between lines there, and I'm not trying to speak for Duarte at all. He and I haven't spoken about this, but I do think it's interesting that she wasn't mentioned in the articles that came out last week. She wasn't mentioned in the long list of names from before. She's clearly someone to have your eyes on for this job right now. And I think, frankly, she'd be a great candidate at Houston for a number of different reasons. But she understands where the future of college sports is going. This whole NIL thing is the future, whether you like it or not, whether I like it or not, whether anyone likes it or not. It's the way the thing is going. And she's built a program that is very successful at a big institution and had a lot of success with it. Can't imagine that that's not a key factor in her name being included thus far. She's not the only name included. She's not even the biggest name included. The next name we're going to talk about, I think you'll probably recognize for a number of different reasons. But before we get to that, putting together an athletic department can be a lot like putting together a car, right? You got to make sure you have all the right pieces in the right places. And passion, drive, and patience are the formula for winning championships. And they're also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. Over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for, and with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. I love that line. You're burning rubber and not cash. All the parts you need, the price you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Extras apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Now, the next name is Oliver Luck. Oliver Luck is a name that I think a lot of Houstonians some will groan at or sigh at or whatever, because his name's been thrown around a bunch of different things around the state of Houston for a long time. He's also the kind of guy that, frankly, has had a lot of different jobs in the last 15 years, frankly. And people will think, wait a second, if he's changing jobs every couple of years, this is a longer haul project. Is he really the best candidate for that longer haul project? Oliver Luck, yes, that is the same Oliver Luck that played for the Oilers in the 1980s. The same Oliver Luck that is father of Andrew Luck, the famous Houston high school product, went on to play at Stanford and then in the NFL for a number of years before cutting his career short to keep from further injuring himself. Yes, he is the same guy that has been in the headlines with high-ranking jobs at the NCAA level. As far as this job goes, go through the resume as far as what hits on what key points for Houston. He was an athletic director at a like-minded school, West Virginia, from 2010 to 2014. Yes, the same time as we mentioned with Keli Zinn, when they were transferring themselves into the Big 12, helped that move there. People have pointed out that also means he was there when they hired Dana Holgorsen. That's all we're going to say about that. From there, in 2014, he went on to become the vice president of NCAA for regulatory affairs, created all kinds of different regulatory oversight committees to make sure schools were keeping up and doing the things they're supposed to be doing and not doing the things they're not supposed to be doing, and was also in charge of enforcing those rules at the NCAA level. So we actually worked above the schools for the NCAA as a whole. In terms of other, I should point out from there, he went on to be the XFL commissioner from 2018 to 2020. There's kind of a gap in his resume with COVID and the XFL shutting down. But then in 2023, and since 2023, he's been the executive director, which is like a commissioner, of the combination conference, the ASUN and the WAC and the FCS. Before all of that, he was also involved extensively in NFL Europe. He was like a team executive, a high-ranking team executive from 91 to 96, and then president of NFL Europe from 1996 to 2000. Between that and his time in West Virginia, he was in charge of the Houston Sports Authority, how the construction and planning of Minute Maid Park, Reliance Stadium, and what we now call the Toyota Center. At the time, obviously, it was all those different things were big money projects in Houston in the early 2000s. He then went on to be the president of the Dynamo from 2005 to 2010, kind of early on in their history. So he's had a bunch of different jobs. And so it's like, Parker, this guy's changed around every 4 or 5 years. What's to say? I guess he is older, right? He's 64, but he's not like old by any stretch. So what's to say that he's not just using this to get back in the college game and then jumps on to be something else in a few years or whatever? And I've got two thoughts. One, if he's the right guy for the first 4 years he's here, I don't know that I care. Because frankly, this is a big moment for Houston. You're in the Big 12. You're at the precipice of something big time. College athletics is changing. You need the right guy in charge. And if he's the right guy in charge, I don't know that I care that he might be a career hopper. That's the right guy is the right guy is the right guy, right? So first things first, and we need to have the right person in charge, whether it's Keli Zinn, Oliver Luck, or whomever, at this moment, because it is an important moment in college athletics. Second, I think it's worth pointing out that across his career, he's kind of at different points only left to move up in the world, right? He went from being a general manager of clubs in NFL Europe to being the president of the whole organization, right? He went from being the AD at West Virginia to being the executive vice president for all of the NCAA, right? He moves up in the world. There are ups from Houston. I don't mean to say it's an AD position. You could be on, board with the conferences or the NCAA or whatever, right? There is an up. But on the whole, I don't know that I fear him like jumping ship to go work, be in charge of Radio Shacks or something, mostly because those are gone. But you get my drift, right? What his job or what his resume indicates to me as far as someone who can understand this job is this guy gets Houston, right? He's been in charge with, again, the Sports Authority, the Dynamo, etc. B, this guy understands growing a program into a conference. West Virginia was, again, transitioning in the Big 12. Houston is a year into the process, kind of in a similar spot, especially when you factor in that West Virginia was going from the Big East and had comparable dollars and cents at the time. Houston did not have that coming in, right? And so that's an important factor here. He also, and this is maybe my own bias, he's a football guy. NFL money, XFL money, right? NFL Europe money, always paying attention to football. And while if you listen to the show for more than a week, you know that I'm a big basketball fan. I'm also not silly. Football money is what makes this whole thing run, right? Being a guy that understands how the business side of football goes at a semi-professional level, NFL Europe, right? And not semi-professional in the sense that it's like less than professional, but semi-professional in that it's like not the NFL, but it is somewhere in between there, right? The NCAA is moving into that world again, whether we like it or not, whether you like it, I like it, or I don't know, my dog Tug likes it, whoever likes it. It's going into this quasi-professional world, and Oliver Luck has worked in football in that sense. He's also worked with the XFL as the commissioner of that league. That's not to say that being the commissioner of the XFL is the exact same thing as raising money for an NIL program at the University of Houston, but it is to say that it is similar enough in that you're in the similar kind of circle, shaking the same kind of hands, getting the same kind of donations and cash flow, etc. Right? Then you factor in the fact that he's got a lot of ties to the city of Houston and would understand the names and players concerned in those cash flow circles. And then across the board, at each stop he's been at, he's kind of had this twinge of people think he's kind of a outside the box thinker. It sounds like, per Joseph Duarte's reporting in the Chronicle, there's kind of multiple camps in the people making the hire here. Some people want someone completely outside the box. Some want someone completely old school, very traditional AD. I wonder if Oliver Luck gets the phone call first because he kind of checks boxes for both camps, right? Again, the only drawback I see here is that he hasn't been an AD in a while. He's not that he has never been one. He hasn't been one in a while. And that he could be doing something else in 4 years, right? And if that's a problem, then if you had your pick, you'd want someone who's your 15. Obviously, I just, if it's the right person, I just think it's just the right person. Now, there are people who are from smaller schools with impressive resumes that we need to mention, and I pulled a couple that I think we've got to mention. But first, all right, 2 AD names to keep in mind for this job come from smaller schools. And I picked 2 that I really like the resumes of to talk about a little bit more in the final segment of today's show, because frankly, there is that contingent, as Joseph Duarte reported, that is looking for a more traditional athletic director. That is to say, looking for someone who's done the job somewhere in the past. And even though college athletics is changing, they see this, again, this is Duarte's reporting and me kind of reading and extending a little bit. The deal here is that as influx as college athletics is, that's all the more reason to have someone who understands being an AD, right? That's the argument for finding someone of the old school, right? And so I looked at resumes of people that were on long lists of names for potential Houston ADs that I thought had resumes that kind of had a nice new school, old school kind of success combination looking thing, right? And so, first guy I want to talk about is Matt Roberts at the College of Charleston. He's been the AD there since 2016. But as the AD there, he has seen records set for the school in giving in 2018, 19, and 21, and seen records in sponsorships in 2020, sponsorship dollars in 2021, 22, and 23, right? I don't. You can say a lot of things about a lot of places. If you're raising a lot of money at the College of Charleston in terms of athletics, you're doing something right. You're saying something right. You're getting people motivated in the right kind of way to donate money and to get sponsorship dollars. And if you can do it at College of Charleston, I tend to think you could do it at Houston with Big 12 backing and so on, right? What do I know? But that's what I'm feeling like is happening here. He also was behind the founding of the Charleston Edge NIL initiative, which relative to the size school and conference that Charleston is in, it's actually done very well. Again, you're extrapolating and thinking, okay, can he turn that into a Houston size, a Big 12 size, a Texas football sized, right? Like, can he make that into the big thing that we need it to be? That's expanding some, I guess that is hypothetical. But I don't think he's just being thrown around because of his work at Charleston blindly. He's also got connections to Texas as a state. He was the deputy AD at SMU from 2012 to 16. While he was there, he was specifically the administrative liaison for football and men's basketball, i.e., the revenue sports. Right, he's pivotal in development of a strategic plan for their finances and involved in creating new buildings and so on and so forth. And I mean, belabor with all that, but he's already used football and men's basketball to pitch in the state of Texas. Right now, obviously, he's had a lot of success at Charleston, finding numbers and pinning numbers on his job versus other people's job while he was at SMU because his job was a little different, is challenging, but he did very well there, right? They built some new buildings while he was there. Before that, so he got to SMU in 2012. He was at the University of Oklahoma, where he was the associate AD for the development at Oklahoma, and he was administrator like the Sooner Club and different other gift-giving programs, yada yada. He's been involved in raising money everywhere he's been. And again, based on some numbers Charleston has relative to other Charleston numbers, I'd say he looks like he's pretty good at it. Right? I think that's an important piece of this, is that he's being good at it. For what it's worth, he's also a North Carolinian. He's from North Carolina. I believe he played baseball at University of North Carolina. And Samson, North Carolina connections, state of North Carolina connections. Obviously, UNC Pembroke a little different, but I feel like you kind of have to have Samson's seal of approval here. Samson loves people from that state. Something there? Is there something there? I don't know. Other one on my list is a guy, I guess, originally from the state of Florida, Eddie Nunez, who is the AD at New Mexico. He's been the top guy in athletics, so they've changed that. He used to be a vice president of the university for athletics, and now it's the AD. But he's been the top guy in athletics at New Mexico since 2017. In that time, he's completely revamped their marketing and new partnerships. Has connected them with 505 Sport Ventureship, supporting NIL for the New Mexico Lobos, and he's really built up those programs, been in charge of some new facilities, things like that as well. At an NCAA level, he's also been named chair of basketball oversight committee, kind of helping keep things in line at the national level. And so, frankly, for what it's worth, he's kind of had some national recognition. It would not surprise me if Houston doesn't hire Eddie Nunez in this cycle, if he's kind of one of those next ADs on the block here, right? He played, I believe it was basketball, University of Miami in South Florida. And I look at this for a number of different reasons, but I also think it's interesting. He's got this success at a smaller school like New Mexico, but from 2003 2017, He was an admin at LSU at the administration level, a handful of different jobs, but all administration level, involved in financing stadiums, athletic foundations, money raising, etc. So again, he's been LSU, similar region of the world, and he's had the experience where he's been at the big school and then been, in charge of things and done well at the smaller school, right? You're seeing a kind of a similarity here amongst my smaller school guys. Last but not least, David Saylor, Miami of Ohio. He's been the AD there since 2021. And in that short time, he's seen big jumps in fundraising while he was there. They call it the Graduating Champions Campaign, and it's tied to academic success as well. So kids are doing well in the classroom, as well as raising a lot of money relative to what they do. He's been on the CFP selection committee. That takes some national recognition. He was at South Dakota before Miami, not South Dakota State, but at South Dakota. And he helped them join a new big conference relative to what the world they were in, being the Missouri Valley. So he's kind of seen the conference transition before, not the Big 12, but has seen a conference transition before. The thing I like about David Saylor was before he was at South Dakota, he was actually at Rice for 4 years and did serve as the interim AD there. Now, I know Rice is not Houston, and Rice in 2009 was certainly not Houston in 2024, right? However, those 4 years he has a tie to the area in a way that not a lot of these other people outside of Oliver Luck will, right? He had 4 years at Rice, was interim AD for basically a school year, 09-10 out of that. If you're familiar with the Rice campus, he is involved in raising money for things like Oshery Court, field turf at multiple stadiums and practice fields, $500,000 scoreboard, etc. And when you think about like Rice in the late aughts, like that's a lot of cash flow for the Owls, right? So I've just listed 5 candidates. I didn't put them in an order necessarily, although I think it's very obvious that who is and isn't on my favorites list. Now, there are a lot more than 5 candidates. The notable name missing, though, is Jeremiah Dickey. At the outset of this, with the guy, had Houston background, University of Houston background. He was a lot of people's favorites. I think a lot of people had him as a shoo-in. I still think he's a great candidate. I'm standing by my analysis of that from before. I'm just saying reports saying that he maybe hasn't had as strong a people have not reached out to him the same kind of way that we might have anticipated. He hasn't necessarily had a whole bunch of phone calls. His phone has not been blowing up in the same kind of way based on, honestly, some Twitter folks, and not Boise State Twitter folks want him to stay. I mean, like people that are actually reporting of things. So I think that while he is a great candidate for the University of Houston, Jeremiah Dickey, AD at Boise State, was at Houston for a period of time as an assistant AD a while back at this point now. I feel like the fact that there haven't been a whole lot of phone calls, or at least there is a report out there have not been a whole lot of phone calls, then maybe things are going different directions, or maybe, he doesn't feel like it's the right time to leave. He's not taking the phone calls or whatever, right? Now, with that said, I'm hoping for more news on this AD search throughout the week. And frankly, by the time you're hearing this on Monday, it might be all for naught. Who knows, right? But we have college football 2025 is coming out this week. The basketball tournament in Houston is starting off this week. Cougs are in summer league. Football season's around the corner. There are all kinds of things going on. It's hard to keep track of on my content calendar what goes when. Oh, and we had a great June in recruiting we got to talk about at some point too. So hit subscribe. Make sure you get a listen to Houston Cougars each and every day here at Locked On Coogs. If you're on YouTube, hit the bell so you know we're live. If you want a second listen of the day, you cannot get enough Big 12 talk. I'm going to recommend going in a second listen at Locked On Big 12. Locked On Coogs is a prime member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.